You know those high-performance fabrics in your jacket, sleeping bag, or that tent you used once for a music festival? Apparently, they're nearly impossible to recycle. But our guest today figured it out. Today on Founders in Motion, we're joined with Ben Wood, a designer turned founder who's on a mission to save technical textiles from the landfills and turn them into beautiful and functional products.
We realized that gear that is ready for alpine conditions is perfectly good, even if it's no longer useful there, is great for a daily life. If you have mono materials, only cotton or only a PVC or only polyester, there are ways to recycle them. But once they're fused, incredibly difficult, nigh on impossible to remove, and therefore very challenging to recycle. The hardest challenge, I think, is maintaining mental balance. There's those emotional fluctuations of yes, you succeeded, or no, that didn't work, and bring yourself back to stable every day to make sure you bring yourself, your best version of yourself, into the studio every day.
What is the best advice that you've ever heard in your entire life?
Yeesh. Look, we all know the reality that 90% of businesses fall through in the first 3 years.
Viral for the wrong reason or total launch flop?
Total launch flop.
Really?
Yeah.
What's your advice to someone who's got creative ideas, a lot of creative vision, but maybe doesn't see themselves as business-minded? Ben Wood, welcome to Founders in Motion.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
It's a very simplistic term. What does Waste in Progress do?
Waste in Progress is a textiles upcycler and a design studio. We work primarily with the outdoor education industry. So we take tents and backpacks that have, I guess, past their use by, so the rips or they're no longer functional for the extreme outdoors, and we clean them, cut them back into their original components, and we sew and make brand new products from those pieces. We realized that gear that is ready for alpine conditions is perfectly good, even if it's no longer useful there, is great for a daily life. So we thought we could find a way to upcycle that gear and keep it out of landfill and make some beautiful product and tell a story along the way. So yeah.
I love that. I think in Founders in Motion and the world in general, we focus so much on tech startups and the unicorns of the world, but I think a lot of really great innovation comes from something so rooted in creativity and giving it a new life. And we were just talking earlier, but I think Melbourne is such a great space to do that because everyone's in love with like vintage clothing and story behind it. So what was the first thing that you worked on?
First thing we worked on was a chalk bag for rock climbers. So I bouldered for many years before this and fell in love with that world, and I've always kind of been in and outside of the outdoors. And so we made essentially a small pot for indoor climbers. There's just been this explosion in the indoor rock climbing world, the bouldering world in Melbourne, and across. I mean, it's huge now, especially with the world comps, and it's in the Olympics and all that. And a lot of my friends who don't climb outdoors and just climb indoors more for social life and all that, wanted a small pot where they could keep a few things like brushes or tape, all these kind of essentials, and then keep their chalk. And usually there's small pouches that you climb up like huge routes with, you strap to yourself, or these big bouldering buckets that usually carry like, for the bouldering obsessed people, massive amounts of kit. So we thought it'd be great to find a little midpoint and a great way to test our materials and also design for kind of a community that I knew well and that I had connections in to kind of find our first ways into retail stores or to gyms and things like that. So it was kind of slightly strategic, but also the materials were great for it, and it was in a community that I thought would be really receptive to a first product like that.
Yeah, and was that like a consumer product?
Yeah, exactly. It was a consumer product. It was one that we designed for friends and family and all our bouldering mates, and then the community here in Melbourne.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I remember when we spoke earlier, you mentioned there was a partnership with WipWrk. Talk to me more about that.
Yeah, Off-Track, bless them. They are one of the key reasons this company is the way it is. It's slowly succeeding in the way that it is. Off-Track is an outdoor gear supply company founded by two outdoor gearheads. So people used to take kids on camps and take them around rivers and all that stuff. And they are suppliers for schools. So they have essentially contracts with Cedar Summit and Patagonia and all these things. And when schools need gear, they contract Off-Track and they get all the kit together for the kids in their camps. They realised that a lot of the gear that was being used on the school camps was being used for 5 years, whatever it might be, and then it would get damaged and it would often go in the bin because a lot of outdoor gear has essentially a use-by date set manufacture. So,
even like textiles, like tents have a use-by date?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, interesting.
The waterproofing wears out or they get damaged in some way, and oftentimes they're still really good, but they have small issues, and to repair them is really time consuming. And so often they end up getting thrown out.
Yeah.
So Off-Track, 8 years ago, founded a program called the Second Life Project. It's essentially an initiative to take on these tents and backpacks that may not be functional for the outdoors, but still might be useful for local school programs or other social initiatives.
Yeah.
I think about like warm clothes that could still really support maybe the homeless or go to at-risk youth who couldn't afford to buy the gear. That was their main mission. And what they realised is some of the gear naturally fed back out into that world, but some didn't. So take a 15-person tent. A lot of the time, if it's got a few rips in it, people don't want it. It's massive. It sits in the garage. It takes up space. And what we realised and what they realised was that there might be an opportunity to make new products from that material. And so 2 years ago, we essentially went in not knowing that Off-Track had this initiative, recommended by a friend of ours, Derek, who had been in and they had some spare materials and he was able to kind of prototype and product design some stuff, an old product design friend of ours. And I asked for some materials and Mitch said, oh, we don't have materials, but we've got a tent. And me at the time, not knowing how to sew, having no idea what I'm doing, there's good material in this tent. Maybe I can cut it back into its panels and make something. And so I took it home and I made a little, like a tech pouch and like a little tote bag and brought it back to Mitch and he's like, what? No one ever comes back. What do you mean? They just give stuff out and it goes to a good home, but no one's ever come back with anything. And he was slightly stunned. And so he took us upstairs and upstairs they'd recently purchased a few sewing machines off the founders of Cedar Summit because they'd upgraded all their machines. And so they had these old machines from the 60s, like beautiful old things that only semi-worked. And they're like, hey, do you want to stay up here and like help us triage the gear and get it back out? But you can also test and sew some things. And this relationship naturally evolved where we supported them with this Second Life project.
Yeah.
And we were able to carve out some time in like a small studio space to prototype and develop our skills. Because I mean, both Frank and I are self-taught. So it's been this quite mutually beneficial relationship where we help them with the gear and we repair for them and we help triage the gear, get it back out, and also we get to take that stuff that's no longer really fit for purpose and turn into products. And that's really how WipWrk was born. It was a complete, like an opportunity with materials and a mistake in many ways.
So you get the materials from Off-Track and then you repurpose it and then do they sell it or do you guys handle that part too?
A lot of it's just given away. We don't really sell any of that. It's the whole point is to get the gear back out to at-risk youth a lot of the time in these outdoor gear programs.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way we kind of help pay our way in the space. I think it's mutually beneficial. Our skills, Frank as an engineer and a business major and myself as a product designer, we support the boys in their initiatives and their ideas and they support us in that way too. So majority of the time we don't sell any of it. We just help repair it about a day a week and get the stuff back out.
Yeah, but that sparked the interest,
Exactly, right?
Like you never know when opportunities will fall in your lap.
You don't. And we were really lucky and in the right space. And I'm really grateful for their support. And it's been a wonderful relationship we've built over the last year and a half. I forget how long I've been doing this already. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. So from the Off-Track project, let's talk about moving to more commercializing. So what was that journey like?
As you could imagine, when two people fresh out of uni try to start a business, you are incredibly excited to make bags for your friends, and you don't worry as much about whether you're going to make any money or if this is going to be a sustainable business. What are finances? What's an accountant? And so we spent the first few months designing the barrel, the little chalk bag, and quickly realised, although we sold out of our first run of product, that was really exciting, making 50 small chalk bags a month or whatever it might be was not going to pay ourselves in the long term. And we had an old freelance client of Frank's reach out and ask whether we could make some protective packaging for his electronics equipment. So we'd started a small business, and these small electronics kit bags essentially needed protective packaging. And we thought, oh, bugger, we can do that. We've got sleeping bags, that's the kind of padding, and we've got kind of this strong canvas tent base. It'd be great as like a protective outer layer. Maybe we can fashion something.
Yeah.
And we did, and that we kind of realized that the commercial space simplifies a lot of the design work because you're just doing it very functionally. So there's not a lot of marketing required, not a lot of complex design, user research, user testing, all of the things that are really important for consumer product, but are very time consuming. And so doing that first contract was kind of a bit of a turning point. We realized there's where we can not just build a financial base for the company, we can also move a lot more material. Because one of the requirements for the consumer product is it has to look really good. People want this as an extension of themselves. You buy things that you love to wear because they look nice. Whereas a commercial product can be much more functionally driven. And so a lot of the materials that we get aren't super pretty, and that's fine because they do a really good job because they're designed for like the Arctic or wherever you need to take this stuff. And so it's perfect as protective packaging. And so there was a bit of a divide there, and we realised there was real value there, and we started to pick up a few more commercial contracts in different parts of Melbourne, and that slowly has built into where we are now, splitting the company in two. So WipWrk, well, two trading names. WipWrk, Waste in Progress Workshop, and then WipTex, Waste in Progress Textiles. And that is now our commercial arm, where we work with local business, a lot in the manufacturing space, who want to take sustainable steps in their processes but don't know how, and we can act as kind of a transitional design team, whatever it might be, to develop these products made from upcycled materials and make sure that they do their job really well and they trust us. Because a lot of it is about trust, and everyone's incredibly busy when you're running a business, and you don't have time for things to fall through if they can be avoided. And so we make sure we take our time and often co-design, so design a solution from virgin materials that they trust, the companies trust, and then design one with upcycled materials and test them together to make sure they know the quality's there. And if it's not, we design for them with materials they know, and we keep working to find a material that will work from the upcycled space and then transition them across and shift them. So that's our approach. So
if I'm understanding this correctly, there's kind of two pillars to the to waste in progress. There is the kind of commercial side, and also the working with WipWrk and just supporting the community there. Is that understanding?
Yeah, I think we frame it more like a funnel. So the Second Life project's at the top. It collects all the material, and all the stuff that's still good to go gets given back out, prepared and given back out. And then we, like the WipTex/WipWrk, so we take in all the rest of the material and we divide it into what's going to be good for a consumer product and what will be good for a commercial product. And then we go out and feed back into the world that way, based on the material. Yeah.
Oh my God, so many pillars of the business. So how do you handle your time?
We manage it with a lot of talking. We're in the car. We drive out to Bayswater. I live in Brunswick. Frank's in Abbotsford. And so there's an hour each way every day where we talk and make sure everything's prioritized really well. And then Frank's really good at logically figuring out what's most important. I'm a little bit more scattered. So I time block everything on the calendar, all prioritized. Monday meetings, Friday meetings, all of that structural stuff to make sure that everything is done when it needs to be done.
So the team has been running for a little bit over a year and a half?
Yeah.
Right?
We'd be coming up to a year and a half in July.
Oh my God, so soon. What's been the hardest challenge that you've had to overcome?
The hardest challenge, I think, is maintaining mental balance. Maintaining just emotional stability, right? It's because of so many factors, like the ambiguity of starting a business, me not having a business background and Frank not having a design background. It's like team management, conflict, all that stuff, building, because you're with someone like 50, 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be challenges there and navigating that. And then it's also the business side of things, like all the ups and downs. I'm self-taught, and so when we go into, a client reaches out to us and says, hey, could you do this? I go, yeah, fairly sure I can. And I'll just have to figure it out. And being design lead or the design director, I guess, I have to trust myself to do that and to make sure that what I'm producing is up to the standard that I hold. And a lot of that time is spent worrying whether I'll be able to do it or not. And I always got there, and I trust myself to always get there. But there's those emotional fluctuations of yes, you succeeded, or no, that didn't work. And bring yourself back to stable every day to make sure you bring yourself, your best version of yourself, into the studio every day. So you're not influencing Frank's mood or making a rash decision because you're tired and you're stressed. All of those systems and all of the support networks you have become really valuable in navigating the ambiguity and the risk and all the things you've taken on. And I think in general, that's the hardest bit, is maintaining a level of trust and confidence and stability in yourself to keeping on, and also not to let the grass on the greener on the grass being greener on the other side, or at least that perception, draw you away from the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So much, but that stuff.
And I'm curious, since you're creative and Frank's more the business type person, what's been some challenges merging those two, working together? Yeah,
there's always going to be some challenges there, because neither of us really understood, especially early on, the process that the other one was taking.
Yeah.
And so Frank saw my creative process. He couldn't understand why I couldn't speed up the creative process in some ways. We need to get this out faster. And as much as I could see the numbers required, it's a balance of Frank knowing that I need to take my time with things and me trying to push myself to get things out as fast as I can, because the business can't survive unless it is financially stable, feasible and stable, right? And so there's a lot of those conflicts of, let's say, even in the product design process, trade-offs between features. Well, this extra feature takes 3 to 6 minutes. Can we charge an extra whatever for the product? Does it need to be there? What hill are you dying on? What are you letting go of? And so much of that happens, and has to be a lot of respect in the way you communicate, and a lot of systems to make sure you know exactly what the mission for the product might be, and how you can cut away things or add things based on your user feedback. There's so much in that, and so much communication, and so many challenges.
Yeah. And I'm curious, and you can totally say you don't feel comfortable answering it, but what's been the hardest client dynamic that you've had to deal with?
Oh, we've been blessed with such good clients. We're so lucky that we've had people that are really understanding of what we're doing, and I think so much of that comes back to the mission we're taking on. It's I think, in the best interest of the whole world, keeping things out of landfill and making the most of what we have and not producing any more than we need to. That people are really respectful and thoughtful and supportive of the mission. Thankfully no bad clients yet.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on a little bit of the high performance technical textiles that you work with.
Yeah.
Why are they so hard to recycle?
Yeah, it's a great question. They're challenging because of the properties required, I guess, to perform at that high level. So take a tent, for example, has to perform in quite challenging environments. Say, we've all got rained on camping before. Tent bases need to be durable and they need to be waterproof.
Yeah.
So often the tent base is made of canvas, that's cotton, so an organic material, in a weave that's really strong. Cotton, although it's very durable in that weave, absorbs water. And so you have to protect it from the water getting through the tent floor and getting into your sleeping bag and leaving you very wet and cold. So they coat the inside of the canvas with a PVC, which is a plastic. And once it's infused into that cotton, it is nigh on impossible to
separate.
And so if you have monomaterials, only cotton or only a PVC or only polyester, there are ways to recycle them in various kind of techniques to do so. But once they're fused, incredibly difficult, nigh on impossible to remove, and therefore very challenging to recycle, if not in reality impossible. There's lots of steps being made to help recycle these kind of monstrous combination fabrics, but it's early days.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, are there any cool technologies or emerging things that people are doing in order to recycle these?
Yeah, there's a couple. There's people developing like enzymes that can eat one of the materials away, so it only leaves the other one. Or the other one that I heard of recently, I think it's a little startup in Spain or Portugal, I can't quite remember where they developed heat dissolvable thread. So if you imagine your pants, made of cotton and like this heat dissolvable thread, you throw them in like a heating chamber, the thread melts away and the panels come out as just cotton. Brilliant. Then it can be recycled and rewoven and started fresh.
Oh, super interesting. And I want to ask, so what's your advice to someone who's got creative ideas, a lot of creative vision, but maybe doesn't see themselves as business-minded?
Yeah. And this is basically me in a nutshell, because I did not have a business mindset, right? So you're just asking the right person. If I was to start this from scratch, I would build a foundational understanding of business through good books, small business for dummies kind of stuff. And then I would go to meetups, I would network, I would build my connections in my local community, because it's all good and well to have those foundations, but very challenging to apply them, especially if you have a unique idea that doesn't fit traditional molds.
Yeah.
So I would go straight for the people or the founders who are doing analogous, similar things and learn from them. That's the best way for sure.
And I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but like diving deeper into that, like how do you balance staying true to your creative vision and meeting things like bottom line or like client requirements, or like not creating too many features that eats into your margins and business things like that?
Yeah, with difficulty, I definitely came from a very perfectionist mindset, right? I think a lot of designers struggle with that. And it has taken time and communication and understanding of business foundations and fundamentals for me to make those trade-offs. I was very, very difficult to deal with probably at the start with Frank, being like, no, the user said they needed that and we're going to put it in. And he goes, well, I mean, great, we can put it in, but I'll double the time for making the product. And we won't be here in a few years' time if we keep sticking with that stuff. So a lot of it is about setting intentions and being incredibly clear about what you're trying to create and where it's going to be most beneficial. And we talk a lot about the Pareto 80-20 principle. And we say juice worth squeeze, is it worth the effort? And is it going to make the difference? And so it's an ongoing discussion constantly, but we make sure the foundations are really clear when we start a product, and then when push comes to shove in manufacturing, so we're in our product development process, we time every single step to the second, so we know what's costing us the most, and we can go through element by element to know, is this going to be valuable for not just the user but the business, and make that call later down the line. But you create a lot of gates and checks and stuff. So for example, like every stitch we approximate costs us $4. So even early on, if I design a product, it's got
$4, that's quite high.
When I say stitch, I mean, a step. I should say step. So like one finished step. So you have a reference point as to how much this might cost and where the benchmark competitors are, and whether it's going to be feasible. So we create these little stepping stones and gates.
So I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah, go hit me.
So would you rather go a year without sleep or a year without Wi-Fi? The caveat is a year without Wi-Fi, but you still have to run your business.
Okay, so right. Oh, goodness me. Part of me wishes I could not sleep so I could get more work done, and that's probably not healthy. I think the no sleep would send me into insanity. So I think I'd have to say no Wi-Fi. Although I don't know how I'm running this business without the internet connection.
Telephone,
Yeah, just bring it back, get the payphone out. There's a little dial-up.
Bring it back.
Yeah, no, I think in reality for the business, it would have to be Wi-Fi. We'd have to just figure out a way without it.
Wow.
Sleep's so important to me. I can't work without sleep.
Me too.
Yeah.
Viral for the wrong reason or total launch flop?
Total launch flop.
Really?
Yeah. Look, I can understand the perspective of going viral. Any traction is good traction, but this mission is too important for us, and I wouldn't want our intentions to be misunderstood, and then we not being able to pivot and truly and stay true to the mission. So if we got known, like I think about actors getting pigeonholed into certain roles, and you can't see them as anything else. If we went viral for the wrong reason, and maybe something's detrimental to the mission, I think that would be, that would hurt more.
Yeah, and unlimited funding or instant product market fit.
Instant product market fit, not even a question.
Always.
Absolutely, not even a question. Yeah, look, I think, and in some ways, unlimited funding just breeds issues. I think we've bootstrapped this because we want to make every step intentional and know that when we have the money, we've bought or moved in directions that we really need, rather than just throwing money at stuff. So product market fit every single time, because I think that's going to create more impact and more value.
Yeah, and what is the best advice that you've ever heard in your entire life?
Yeesh. I'll keep it business specific, because otherwise I'll tear off on a different tangent. I think the importance of the systems you have in your life. It's all good and well to have perfect product fit and to have a Ripple launch and all these other things. And it's really exciting when it all sticks. It's so exciting to build a small business and to be working on something you care so deeply about.
Yeah.
But there are so many ups and so many downs, and making sure that I have all the systems in place to look after myself and maintain a level of balance in my life and look after the people around me that I really care about. Because look, we all know the reality that 90% of businesses fall through in the first 3 years.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that I did not forget to support the people around me and didn't forget to look after myself, because my mental and physical health will always be more important than this business, no matter how valuable I think it can be. I will, as a founder and somebody who's very passionate about this, create far more impact over the course of my life if I look after myself rather than burning out now and frying any opportunity in the future.
And how do you keep yourself from burning out?
I am an avid sports person of every code you can throw at me. I don't deal good with contact, so I'm not a rugby player or an AFL player. I break too easily. But I keep myself very active. I love getting out in the outdoors. I've been a surfer and a rock climber I've surfed for most of my life. And it's carving out that time and space to clear your mind. But just the act of talking through things allows you to process them for me and clears my mind, and it means I can come back tomorrow and only really worry about the stuff that's stuck, not all the other noise that's floating around. I can kind of process it and let it go. And it's same as diary. I just think it's an audio diary.
I love that. I'm also a big advocate for anything health and fitness, and fitness type.
Yeah.
The only last question I have is, if for the next founder that we bring on Founders in Motion, what question would you want to ask them?
I think it's that age-old question, is if money wasn't an issue and nothing was an issue, what would you be doing?
Oh, I love that.
That's my favorite one.
So spiritual.
It's the reset. It's the one that it clarifies whether you are doing something because of societal expectations or you're doing something for you.
Well, thank you, Ben, for coming on Founders in Motion.
Appreciate you having me.
Again, super enjoy hearing from a creative perspective, because I think we just focus so much on like tech startups and all that fun stuff that makes the news. But I think businesses come in different size, different shapes, and different types. And I think it's great to highlight a business that's doing something a little bit different from what we usually see in the news.
Right.
But thank you for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. Awesome. Cheers.
Society spends a lot of time glorifying tech founders, but we think it's also very important to hear from someone on the creative side of things. Hope you enjoy the conversation with Ben, and if you want to hear more early stage founder stories, you can find them here. And remember to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us in delivering these content to you. Till next time.